so many people make the argument, oh, you just want to bring the past back or something, or you're stuck in the past, or you're obsessed with the past. If people don't really understand our present experience, our present
Hmm.
racialized experience, then that argument is still going to hold sway for people and power. And part of the reason is because of the ignorance that people have about history, and this story that
Right.
they've already accepted. So, you know, in addition to making sure that people learn better history and have access to some of the things that you've learned, whether it's through the show that you're doing, whether it's through your uh, your um, speaking events, it's also important that people have space to share their current stories of being racialized and having white supremacy act on them in their own lives, because literally everyone has a story about it, and a lot of people don't even
Hmm.
know they have a story about it, because they've never reflected upon it, because why would they? There's no
And the
space for
number
it.
of people that are afraid to address it or afraid to talk about it always surprises me. And I spend a lot of time writing about history and race and education, but I spend far less time talking about it with people, especially with white people, because the circumstances don't necessarily present themselves. But I was in a meeting with a small group of, I guess, Democratic leaning people prior to the election and I was the only black person there. I got invited by somebody that read some of my stuff on Substack. And so I came and they were kind of afraid to open up and ask questions. And I get that a lot from people that read my stories and say that, I'm afraid to talk about this, but and then go on and start telling their story and some of their experience. And maybe if there was more discussion about it and about the truth, that we get a lot further in penetrating some of these barriers.
I'm so glad you said that. Let's talk a little bit about that fear that that person kind of explained to you, because it's
Hmm.
something I encounter all the time when I have conversations on race with racialized white people. And it's actually something I'm going to be writing a piece on for Medium soon. So I want to get some of your thoughts. I'm going to stick those in there. So,
Okay. And if I had to start, I guess, categorizing them, I say it would come more from white women in their 50s and older that are afraid to speak up. Most of the men wouldn't categorize it the same way. But there's some of it is concern of a reaction, is that they'll get negatively stereotyped or typed for having their opinions and feelings. But it's just the number of people that have never talked about it in their own lives. And even though they recognize to some degree, at least, what's going on, it's never come up in form of a discussion, or they don't want to go against their family members, their parents or grandparents at the dining room table. That there's a fear of the repercussions, not even necessarily from Black people, for having opinions or questions even about race.
what do you think? I mean, I don't want you to necessarily speculate, I guess, but
Mhm.
has anyone ever actually articulated what the actual fear is? Have you ever put anyone to the test and been like, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you worried about? Like, have you ever asked anyone?
I've not asked anybody that question in particular. They've tried to tell me sometimes in their own words, and I guess that fear comes from being not as well thought of by their peers more than any other source. They didn't seem to be concerned about how well they were thought of by Black people, for example.
That's what I find. So I'm like, and also, isn't it such a self-report? If you're fearful for how other people look at you, isn't that telling you something about what you're thinking? Shouldn't that be
Mhm.
some kind of a signal to you to
You would
maybe
think.
self-reflect?
Mhm. You
It's
would think
so
that.
weird to me, because that's how, like, isn't that really the only way that we kind of have a check on ourselves, is through interaction with other people, communication with other people? And then, sometimes that's the only way we can really know whether we need to make adjustments to our own selves, right? Because we're all human beings with blind spots. You need other people in order to expose your blind spots. So if you're being put in a situation where, you know, that kind of blind spot is being exposed for you in the race context, and it's making you feel some kind of way about yourself, or fearful that about some kind of consequences about yourself, or shameful, like,
Mhm.
it's really hard for me to comprehend the reaction to that being like suppression, which often that's exactly what it is. It's like, okay, well, we got to smush that way down and never talk about it again.
The
You know,
minds of the people that I discuss it with, there is no such thing as suppression. Racism is a thing of the past, and they've been able to convince themselves that these problems that people are shouting to the rafters about systemic racism and voter suppression and stuff like that simply don't exist, and they've been given the tools by social media, Fox News, and whatever to have something to say, which means that they don't have to consider anything you're saying.
thanks for watching. For access to the full length conversation and all of the 2 hour long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.